Namaste. So today we're going to talk about proper gait, so proper walking pattern. I highly recommend you go back and look at the hip extension video under Pilates Fundamentals, hip extension. So hip extension is how far our femur bone, our thigh bone, moves behind us in the socket, right? The bone moves in the pelvis without the pelvis rotating and without the lower back arching, right? So it's the movement of the thigh bone. It's a Pilates fundamental hip disassociation. We're moving the thigh behind us without any rotation in the pelvis and without any displacement of the lower back or any arching of the lower back, right? So if you look at, again, the Pilates fundamental prone hip extension, that's going to help you a lot. We're going to go over it today. We'll review it, and then we'll go into our gait or walking pattern. So you're going to want to find a flat place to lie down, and we're going to lie on our tummy. You're going to stack your hands, so 4 fingers on 4 fingers, and you're going to rest your forehead right there, so your nose has a little hole, and we're going to lie flat on our tummy. Again, forehead is resting. Feet are hip width apart, top of the feet are grounded. You guys, I'm gonna lift my head to talk to you so you can actually hear me. So you want to feel the concept of neutral pelvis, which feels like a pelvic tilt. Again, all Pilates fundamentals you can check out in other videos. So if we just totally relax here, what happens is our lower back arches and our waist and belly drops into the mat. So every time you exhale, you wanna pull the waistline up and the pubic bone into the ground, or the tailbone towards the heel, same thing, right? So on an inhale, I want you guys to feel that let go. You'll feel the belly drop and the lower back arch. And on an exhale, you pull your belly in, lift the waistline and pull your pubic bone into the mat and your tailbone long. You'll feel a little space in the lower back. Now you guys, this is happening not from a booty clench, but from the pelvic tilt or the abdominals, the Pilates breath. Again, inhale, let that go, let the lower back release. Exhale, lift your navel, pull the pubic bone into your mat. And then one more, inhale, let it go. Feel how the lower back has a subtle arch or kind of compression to it. And on an exhale, lift your navel and find neutral pelvis. So neutral pelvis means my hip points and my pubic bone are on the same plane. Again, if I'm not engaging my abdominals, what happens is my tailbone's sticking up. It's subtle. And I have a little compression in my lower back. So I'm going to keep my lower belly engaged. And now we're going to move into hip extension. Take a full breath in. And on an exhale, you're going to hover your right leg off the mat. So it's a very, very straight leg. I'm not bending my knee. I'm moving from my hip socket, keeping my tailbone long. Inhale, lower the leg. And on an exhale, lift your left leg. Again, inhale, lower. You guys continue. Exhale, right. Inhale, lower, use your breath. Maintain the pubic bone pulling into the mat as you lift the left. Back and forth, you guys continue. So the idea is you're keeping the lower belly engaged, the pubic bone anchored. So there's a lengthening of the lower back, and you're trying to lift from the hip socket. So you're moving the thigh bone, not the pelvis. So you're moving the thigh bone behind you without rolling that side of the waist up off the mat. And without allowing any arching in the lower back. You guys, 3 more. Back and forth. Use your exhale to lift. You're stabilizing the pelvis in neutral pelvis. And then 1 more each side. Awesome. And then let's sit back in child's pose. So if it's comfortable, sit your hips back, rest your forehead. Take a few deep full breaths here. And if child's pose isn't comfortable, you guys just lie on your back, hug your knees into your chest, let the lower back round, take a few deep full breaths. And let's come on back up to standing. So again, we're gonna go back to the concept of neutral pelvis. You're gonna take the heel of your hands and you're gonna rest them right on your hip points. Your thumbs will touch each other and your pointer fingers will touch each other. So you've got your thumbs lined up with your hip bones, your pointer fingers on your pubic bone, makes a triangle.
You want your triangle flush, right? So whatever, when we're upright, hip points and pubic bone on the same plane, right? So not that, that's my tailbone behind my hip points. Not this, that's my tailbone or my pubic bone in front of my hip points. Neutral, yeah? We also want the hips level side to side. So not one hip bone is higher than the other, right? My pant line is level. And we also, when we go into gait, walking, as we go into hip extension, like we just did on your tummy, we want the legs to move back and forth without a rotation in the pelvis, right? So a lot of times when someone takes a step, as that leg goes into extension, that back leg goes into extension, what happens is the hip rotates. And now I've got compression somewhere in my lumbar spine or my hip joint or my knee joint, right? So we want the hips, the pelvis to stay stable as we walk. So you take a step forward, and as you lean into the front foot, the back leg is in hip extension. If I don't have enough flexibility and range of motion in my front thigh, a few things can happen. My pelvis will rotate, I'm compressing somewhere, and or my lower back's gonna arch, and I'm compressing somewhere. So you ultimately wanna feel the same sense of opening across the front thigh we did in our prone hip extension as you move. Let's try the other side. Step the foot forward. Put your weight in your front foot. Keep your back leg on the floor behind you and try to keep your hips neutral without allowing that left hip to roll back, without allowing the tailbone to stick back or the lower back to arch. Again, keeping what we call neutral pelvis. So play around, walk a little bit. And can you take a step and allow the hip to extend behind you, without any rotation in the hips, and without any arching of the lower back, right? So we're looking, keep your hands on your pelvis, it's really helpful. We're looking to feel pure hip extension. Pure hip extension, you guys, it's actually said in physical therapy that the #1 loss of range of motion in human adults above age 25 is hip extension. Again, that's the femur bone moving behind us, stabilizing the pelvis without any rotation in the pelvis, without any arch in the lower back, right? The thigh bones right here, where they meet the tushy, moving behind us. And often, you guys, we're gonna feel a stretch across the quads and hip flexors because we sit so much, we sit too much, that we're constantly shortening these hip flexors. So not only is it hard to stand up, but then when we go to take a step, we're getting compression somewhere in the lumbar spine or the hip socket. So you guys play with it. Revisit the videos, neutral pelvis, revisit the video, prone hip extension, play with it, incorporate it into your day-to-day life. Use your hands on your pelvis. Feel the sense of keeping the pelvis stable as you take steps so the hips move behind you and you get an opening across the front thighs. Yeah, it will change everything. Keep playing with it, keep practicing. Namaste.